And then, if I had not have seen that with my own two eyes, I would never have believed that year 13. I mean, that scarred me. Shall we get to the lesson now, please?
Oh yes, please.
Oh dear.
Right, let's carry on. Let's try and bring some sense of sanity to this. So we're on to, hopefully you've got it, the lesson we're looking at today is language and terminology of the historical notes. And we're moving on a little bit with that now. Is that size okay, Abby? Is it a bit, do you want it zoomed out a bit? Or?
If you could zoom in just a little bit, please.
Zoom in today? Oh dear.
Yes, please. You underestimate
How's that?
Or overestimate. That's perfect. Thank you.
Good. Right. So, keeping on our good professor here, he loves to use a foreign language every so often. He drops in, rather than saying that the text they're using might not be reliable, he calls it, soi-disant, and then he uses his curca and his post facto. What do you think this suggests about the character that Atwood's created here? What sort of status is she trying to give to him, do you think? Anybody can answer that question. Feel free to pitch in.
One of entitlement and education and
flamboyancy. I like that. Yeah. Sense of entitlement. Yes, I do like that. Yeah.
Almost.
Anything else?
Not intelligent, but like.
No, I'd agree with you. It is, isn't it? He is sort of showing off. I mean, he's kind of grandstanding with his intelligence, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Katie, what are you thinking?
Kind of like that's like, when someone wants to make themselves like escalate their own status more than it actually is, like take themselves that next level up by saying something that other people in the audience may not understand, to have that ability to explain to them.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's that kind of one-upmanship. I like that phrase, escalate status. Yeah, I do like that. Yeah, and it's all that, and it also makes it that looks very one-upmanish. Oh, that's terrible, isn't it? Dear.
Self-righteous.
That's what it's meant to be. Yeah. And it's but that idea of making it come sound kind of academic, isn't it? That we're having here. Again, which it's all about kind of applying status to it. Okay. And you do get that idea, don't you? That it's this about it's like a speaker as well, kind of manipulating his audience here. He kind of knows the audience that he's playing to, and he really is sort of, shaping his language around that. And again, it is about making himself elevated status. Okay, and then I've taken out a couple of them. Now, I think as well we have that what I've called sort of forensic approach to the language. And it cuts Gilead down, doesn't it, to its pre-Gilead period, its middle period, and I suppose we can think about this as well being the post-Gilead era as well, because they're looking back on a point of history. But it's that kind of language that he uses. We've got Caucasians. Again, he's got the AIDS epidemic, all of these things going on, and this language, again, it's all about adding legitimacy to the professor's account. He thinks that that he is the sort of the go-to speaker on this. He is coming across as somebody who knows that this topic inside out. And so the extract I've got given there. The reasons for this decline are not altogether clear to us. Some of the failure to reproduce can undoubtedly be traced to the wider availability of birth control of various kinds, including abortion in the immediate pre-Gilead period. Some infertility then was willed, which may account for the differing statistics among Caucasian, non-Caucasian but they are strains, syphilis and also the infamous AIDS epidemic, which, once they spread to the population at large, eliminated many young sexually active people from the reproductive pool. Stillbirths, miscarriages, and genetic deformities were widespread and on the increase, and this trend has been linked to various nuclear plant accidents, shutdowns, and incidents of sabotage that characterised the period, as well as to leakages from chemical and biological warfare stockpiles and toxic waste disposal sites, of which there were many thousands, both legally and illegal. In some instances, these materials were simply dumped into the sewage system and to the uncontrolled use of chemical insecticides, herbicides, and other sprays. Right, what I want you to do with that bit of text there is I want you to react to it. What is Atwood, do you think, trying to get across in this piece of text here? What does it add to The Handmaid's Tale? Is it irrelevant? Or is there something maybe a little bit darker going on here? Is it beginning, this last section with the historical notes, is it doing something else which really challenges Offred's account? Okay, if I give you sort of 8 minutes to respond to that, you know, jot down some ideas, and then we'll discuss it. That'd be long enough, do you think?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you got your 8 minutes. So that means that 22 minutes past, to be precise.
Okay.
On you go. Sorry to distract you.
I was like, what is that?
Go, I can hear fast and furious tapping going on. Okay, we ready to discuss?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Katie, do you want to begin, please? What have you taken from this section?
So I pointed out that it's a justification of Gilead's regime, really. Like, it talks about nature and like how the world was being ruined, and how Gilead, in a sense, kind of saved it from that ruin, which obviously contrasts Offred's view, which was emotional, and like the world before was obviously amazing, but in reality it wasn't, when you hear it from a factual perspective.
Yeah, that's good. It is this idea. It's and I'm going to put the factual in inverted commas because we know it's still this work of fiction, but it comes across very much, as being factual. And what did you see? What was it that really began to make you think that this was a bit an attempt to offer some justification? Because that's exactly one of the ideas that I was taking from it as well.
Well, I think the way it's taught, it only focuses on the negative aspects, and like even when it talks about like women not wanting to reproduce and not wanting to have children with birth control and abortions, it's a failure to reproduce. It's like their failure role to not like. It's not just a well, they didn't want children, which is okay. It's a they failed in their role.
Yes, spot on. Totally agree. And again, it makes them seem a little bit guilty in what they have done. Yeah, I agree with that. Really good. Gabe, what about you?
I found that, which one should we? I went through it as more of a literary, like the techniques and everything that was kind of used. So obviously it was a bit of like I mentioned the justification of the Gileadian regime, and you also mentioned the imagery of like a hostile individuality. It's like it's almost labeling or singling out those who were indifferent, not indifferent, sorry, different, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I like that. Yeah.
Almost a personification of death in a way, as if it physically committed those actions that are being listed. That's another thing. A lot of listing. Thoroughly to describe everything in detail to create more of a dramatic effect.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then again, you've got that the real sort of graphic language it's used, isn't it? I'm thinking the section there. Yeah. Where it goes into the stillbirths, and then it goes on to genetic deformities, miscarriages, and that again, coming back to what Katie had said initially as well, isn't it? These are medical issues, but the kind of subtext does seem to come across that it's the females who are at fault here. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Abby, what do you want to add into the mix?
Okay, so in an interview, Atwood once described the world she created in Handmaids as an ustopia, in which was that a good song? Okay, so which describes how a dystopia and utopia, well, one person's utopia will be someone else's dystopia, and a dystopia will be someone else's utopia. So going hand in hand with that, I can't remember which chapter it was either 30 or 32 or something. The commander says, better never means better for everyone. It always means worse for some. And I feel like PX Soto takes the more cynical attitude of this, and that Offred is complaining that she is the one who's worse off because she's in Gilead, whereas Gilead seems, well, the way the pre-Gileadian era is portrayed to the audience makes Gilead seem like a vast improvement, because I took the example of the toxic waste cleanup system that they have going on in Gilead, and that can very easily be manipulated to say that it was a humanitarian effort to clean up the waste.
Yeah,
and
good
to stop
points.
further
Good points.
infertility. So yeah, it's very manipulative in that way.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And again, it's coming back to this justification. And if we think about, because it's coming from the male perspective, and it's almost about that sort of justification of Gilead's existence, both politically and historically. What does this part of the text almost begin to sound a little bit like?
Like he's trying to rewrite the events of Gilead.
Yeah, which is that idea of revisionism. Yeah, that we can think about from that historically. I think also. Yeah, I think it does kind of almost take on that sort of tone of a manifesto, which is there to justify, Gilead's existence at that. It does real events, and this is where the context part is important. For example, we have. Oops, didn't want to do that. Yeah, we have the nuclear plant act, and at the time I write, there had been a couple. Here's a little bit quick quiz. Can anybody? I'm sure you'll get one. I want to see if anyone knows it. Where were the nuclear plant accidents in the mid 80s? Can you name them both?
Chernobyl.
Yeah, that's one. That's the one that everybody knows about. Yeah, that you always leap to. There was one before them, no, and it happened in America.
I think I know it.
Is that the Justification? Do you remember the book, the story we read where it was in GCSE?
Yeah. There will come soft rains.
It's based. That's the one, isn't it? Oh.
Yeah. In America, 3 Mile Island is a reactor plant, and one of their reactors goes into meltdown, and they were very close to a Chernobyl type incident, but they managed to get sorted just in time. But at one point, there was a real concern that it was going to do exactly what happened. And this is I'm pretty sure it's pre-Chernobyl, and I'm pretty sure it was the same sort of thing happened. And then Chernobyl itself did happen. Talking of Chernobyl, have any of you watched the Chernobyl on Sky, the drama?
It's horrendous.
As long as binges goes, it's well worth a look. Oh. So we have that, and the toxic waste disposal. And again, that is a common thing that was happening. So again, it all lends this air of reality. There was a famous one. There was a chemical plant in India at Bhopal, which just basically did a lot of toxic dumping, and it went straight into the water system, and it went into the sewage system, all that sort of stuff. And the amount of deaths it caused was phenomenal. And then, of course, another one that you might recall, what was the herbicide that eventually got used in the Vietnam War?
Oh, Agent Orange.
Yeah. Agent Orange. It was used organically in farming, but then it became a war weapon, and so what again makes this sound also kind of like chillingly real is the fact that there are things that, you know, within the context, you think, yeah, this is not. And again, it goes back to the whole point, isn't it, that where Atwood always says that she puts nothing into the novel that hasn't happened at some point in human history, and that is certainly in there, and it lends credence almost to the professor's speech, and it makes it all sound very, very plausible, and it makes it sound again as if it gives it that kind of air of reality, factuality to it as well, and it begins to sort of change our perceptions of the text as a whole. How does it make you, just out of curiosity now, how does it make you react to the professor? Do you warm to him, or do you dislike him in any way, shape, or form?
I do not like him.
Do you go first then, Gabe? Because you first in there. Why do you dislike him?
I just feel like he has such a sense of like emotionlessness, if that were. He's so emotionless, and I feel like he's very cold and almost toxic and waste-like himself.
Yeah.
He kind of makes everything seem deprived and makes everything you see or read like very dismal. So and almost creates like a bit of a hostile individuality among like, I don't know, like the different things that have been listed. So using words like sabotage and the elimination of young people, it's like, why? I can't warm to someone who uses terms such as that, if you know what I mean, to describe death or pain.
Yeah. Good points. Yeah, Katie and Abby, how do you react to the professor as a character?
I'll let Abby go because she said very vehemently.
I don't like the professor because I just feel like
why not?
It almost becomes an attempt to try and revive the message of Gilead again. It's been all that time since Gilead. He's still trying to justify it, even at the 12th symposium, however far after Gilead that is.
Yeah.
Even though we don't know for certain that everything happened as Offred said, we equally don't know. And he doesn't know that he's right either, but he's so naive and ignorant to the fact that he could be wrong. And
do you think sorry to cut across you there, but do you think he thinks he's wrong? I mean, and again, he talks about the problem of authentication of this. Does he see the problem as lying with himself or lying with Offred?
With Offred.
Yeah.
But I feel like he only says, oh, as much as we can look into this, we're not sure. It's more to give the air of sympathy to his personality.
Yeah. Katie, what about you?
I can see. I agree that I think his attitude is wrong to the situation. So I think he has valid points because obviously we know that all of these events have taken place, and it is very possible that they did take place before Gilead. But the fact that he's justifying the horrificness of Gilead with the events, it's like, okay, so Gilead possibly helped resolve some of these issues, but it also led to mass raping of women, many deaths and executions. Like take one positive and combat it with the negative of the actual situation, but he just continues to blame everyone before like it's their problem and like they caused it, which obviously they didn't.
Yeah, no, you get that. I mean, it's a little bit like, and as you'll see when I've gone down, and again, this next section I thought, oh my goodness, how prescient of Atwood to write this, because I mean, if we focus on this this section here where I'm about Judd, I mean, you just think, oh my God, this is America today. Oh no, it's just up here, isn't it? No, what's right? It's the second paragraph. Judd, on the other hand, seems to have been less interested in packaging, more concerned with tactics. It was he who suggested the use of the obscure CIA pamphlet on the destabilization of foreign governments as a strategic handbook of the sons of Jacob, and he too who drew up the early list of prominent Americans of the time. He's also suspected of having orchestrated the President's Day massacre, which must have required maximum infiltration of the security system surrounding Congress, without which the Constitution could never have been suspended. And you read that bit and you think, And there's no way Atwood could be thinking about this is the way that America will possibly lurch in the future. Although, she said, if we don't stop these people, this is what happens. But, with the whole attack on Congress last week, you just think in that historical section, blimey, that is on the money. When you saw these guys having their selfies taken with the police officers, it shows you that whole thing is not that far-fetched. And the amount of people who were caught up in this last week, there was it 2 police officers from Seattle were also caught in the CCTV, and recognised. That's meant to be guys who are upholding the law and all that sort of stuff. And there was, again, a Republican congressman also in the crowd last week who's since resigned his seat, sort of thing.
Well, there's been 3 that have been associated with it, hasn't there? 3 Republican congressmen who have been named now.
Yeah. And you think this is, this is taking us into a whole new territory, isn't it? But it just shows you, again, this sort of justification of the unjustifiable. That's what we're witnessing quite regularly now, isn't it? When it's come to that impeachment trial, and there's the Republican representatives sort of taking odds with the system. I'm not actually coming out and defending Trump this time, saying, what we need to do is this hearing process. But yet these are the guys who have given legitimacy to destabilization throughout the whole sort of Trump presidency. And that seems to be here in this historical perspective too. And it seems to be the line that gets peddled by the professor here. And I think it is like many a revisionist in history. It's like that. It's like those who try to sort of justify what's going on in Nazi Germany at the time and saying the reasons for it, taking it all back to the Treaty of Versailles, saying, if we hadn't treated them so badly. And it is this kind of attempt to morally justify the unjustifiable. And that's what I think makes the professor quite a chilling character in a way when you begin to analyse how he comes across, and also the nature of the language that is being used here, because it is, as we've said earlier on, it's so academic, it's so matter of fact. But what he's dealing with here is the persecution of individuals. It's the eradication of civil rights, of human rights. It's an attack on one specific gender, and he's just looking at it as a kind of analytical exercise. And that's what kind of makes it a bit concerning, because then it takes away, as you say, from that personal voice of Offred, because isn't that what we really need to hear about the survivors of a place like Gilead, to get to the full horror of it, and not these kind of academic types? What are we thinking?
Slightly off topic, but just as well, 2 points. Firstly, is that when the impeachment trial was happening, I was watching it on CNN because I'm a right nerd, so of course I sat up.
I fully endorse. I became such a CNN convert during the presidential election, and then through when this began to happen. It is so good.
But
honestly, it's so much.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say it's so much better than BBC, because they seem like they're having an actual conversation.
Yeah. And what I like at some points is they just call it for what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
But carry on, Katie.
She frozen.
Oh, she's frozen again.
Whilst it was happening, and I was like, oh look, I'm watching your news kind of thing, and he was like, oh, I don't watch my news because it's all full of left-wing people who are trying to corrupt the presidency. And I was like, I've changed this conversation now real swift away from the fact that I'm slightly sure he's a Trump supporter, but we're all good with that.
Who are you talking about? Sorry, I think you frozen.
Andres, the
oh yes, yeah.
Oh, yes. I don't think he'll get along with Jenny, who I'm talking to, because she is obviously Mexican, so she hates Trump.
Yeah.
we have great conversations.
But it is, isn't it? It's an idea because, again, in a way, you look to trust people like the professor, don't you? Because you think he's an academic, he's a professor, he'll deal in truths. And yet here he is putting this kind of spin on things. It's all his interpretation. And again, we come back to the point as well. He focuses on the focuses on the male. He doesn't focus on offering. And the way she kind of gets dismissed, even though the whole Handmaid's Tale is her account that they have pieced together. And again, you've got the irony of a male piecing together the female account into the order that they think fits. And it fits in with their kind of perceptions of Gilead and how it has existed. But here in this sort of, postscript to Gilead, the focus is very much on, well, those who would be seen as the victors of Gilead. He doesn't focus on the victims. And again, it's that classic one, isn't it? Wasn't that quote about history, Katie? History is always seen through the eyes of... Is it sort of victorious, that idea, never through the eyes of the victims?
Mm.
Yeah.
I hate to be a downer.
Yeah.
We've got a new variant of COVID
Oh, what?
from Brazil, and it attaches to human cells much better, so it will be therefore a lot more infectious. And it's
Well,
already okay.
Thanks for cheering us up, Gabe.
I'll let you know.
So that means we're going to all be permanently stuck in our houses forever and a day.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. Just to quickly wrap up, other things that are really chilling and relate to the bit of situation forecasting plan with there's a boatload of views into the Atlantic to maximise profits. Change the race, and who was this done by American privateers? Anybody know?
Sorry, sir, you cut out then, but I think it's
sorry.
me.
No,
No, me
it's for
too.
me as well.
Sorry, the reference to the boatload of Jews being dumped into the Atlantic, that again is a close referencing to the slave trade, which is what they used to do. They just used to chuck bodies overboard, because they'd have enough on board to ensure a profit, that sort of thing. And the other thing that sort of relates to America historically here is also the fact that during the Second World War, while everybody else was increasing their quotas of Jewish refugees into their countries, America actually cut the number of Jewish refugees that it would take at the height of the Second World War, which again, that was going back to that sort of historical certainty, just to show that what can happen in these sort of democracies if they go down a certain darker route. Okay, right. Well, this is bringing us to the end of today's lesson and our first week of lockdown.
Oh no, that's only been 1 week.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Only been 1 week.
But just think, 4 more weeks and it's half term.
Yeah.
That's true. Although I don't think we'll be back after half term.
Got to stay positive.
Oh gosh.
Well, not looking at the hospitals. Anyway, thank you for this week. It's been fun again. Oh, I meant to ask you as well, what's up your sleeve for your Shakespeare monologue, Katie?
See, sir, if I told you that, I would ruin the whole surprise.
Oh, right.
I may have to bend the rules ever so slightly, but trust me, it will be worth it.
Do you know what? I'll take that. I'm happy with that. I think you've got us all intrigued now.
Yeah.
Right. Well, have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, and get away from some screen time. That's what I would say. You've probably seen enough this week to last you quite some time.
Okay.
Rest of the lockdown.
And yeah, see you all next week. Okay.
Thanks,
Right.
sir.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.